Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. Psalm 34:19. Lord, why does it seem like the more I try to walk with you, the narrower the path gets? I asked silently, almost fearing the answer. The voice came softly but firmly, as if knowing exactly how heavy my hands were. Because, son, gold is not shaped by the wind, but by fire. I fell silent. It was strange to hear. I wanted to believe that following God was a shield against suffering, a ticket to smooth days, as if faith were a free pass to a smooth path. But he continued, "Do you think I couldn't remove every valley, quench every storm? I can. But if I took away every headwind, how would you learn to trust that I hold the helm?" I felt the weight of the question, and I realized that, deep down, my prayer wasn't just for deliverance, but for control. I wanted God to do it my way, in my time. He smiled, not sarcastically but tenderly, and said, "The problem isn't the storm, it's what you believe about me in the midst of it." Suddenly, I remembered the times I cried thinking I was alone, and how days later I noticed subtle signs of care. A hug that arrived at just the right time, a door that opened when I had already lost hope, a strength that appeared out of nowhere when I was ready to give up. "I was there each of those times," he whispered, "but you only looked out to sea, not at whoever was in the boat with you." My heart sank. Could it be that my greatest struggle wasn't with my circumstances, but with how I interpreted them? Could it be that the promise of deliverance wasn't about avoiding pain, but about walking through it with dignity and hope? He then asked, "If I promised you a path without tears, would you love me for who I am, or just for what I do?" I was left speechless, and it was in that silence that I understood. Perhaps God doesn't chase away every storm because some of them carry messages that can't be delivered on sunny days. Perhaps he allows certain battles because only in them do we discover who he truly is, and who we truly are. But there was still a restlessness within me. "What if I weaken, Lord? What if I can't take it?" He answered without hesitation, "Then I will carry you, always. But if you will allow me, before I pull you out of the fire, I want to show you that there is a place where the flames no longer burn, and that place is in the center of my presence." I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. It was as if God was peeling away layers of illusions I'd built up over the years. And deep down, a question began to grow, burning in my chest. If the Lord didn't promise to avoid struggle, then what does he really want to teach me in it? I didn't have that answer yet, but I knew I had to keep listening, because maybe the next word would change everything. "Son, do you know the price of bearing my name?" God's question came like a bolt of lightning cutting through the silence. I hesitated before answering, trying to guess what he wanted to hear. "It's living differently. It's seeking holiness," I began, but he interrupted me with a tone that mixed compassion and firmness. "No, it's being willing to be hated for it." That bothered me. Hated. The word sounded too harsh. I wanted to believe that following God would make people more receptive to me, that love and kindness would generate respect. But he continued, "If the world didn't accept me, do you really think it will applaud those who walk like me? If I was rejected being perfect, why do you expect approval being imperfect?" My chest burned with a mix of wounded pride and harsh reality. It was easy to talk about faith when everyone smiled and nodded. But what about when it provoked dirty looks, veiled jokes, or even closed doors? "Lord, is it fair to suffer for doing what is right?" I asked, almost accusingly. He didn't take offense. "You measure justice by comfort, but I measure it by eternity." That echoed within me. Was I willing to live for heaven's approval, even if it meant losing the world's? Did I have the courage to stand firm when public opinion was against my beliefs? God, as if reading my thoughts, said, "Many seek the crown, but few accept the weight of the cross." That sentence stuck in my throat like something impossible to swallow. I thought of the times I'd given in to silence to avoid conflict, the days I'd disguised my faith to avoid appearing too radical. And he, in a gentle voice, asked me, "Would you rather be accepted by men for a few years or received by me forever?" I found myself without excuses. The silence between us was heavy, but at the same time liberating. God wasn't calling me to a comfortable religion, but to a non-negotiable loyalty. I understood that being his wasn't just about wearing the shirt when it suited me, but keeping it even when the whole world tried to tear it off. But something still hurt. "Lord, what if they reject me so much that I lose everything?" I asked almost in a whisper. Then, my son, you will have lost what could never save you, and you will have kept the one treasure no one can steal, my presence. I took a deep breath. It wasn't the kind of answer that reassures, but the kind that awakens. And as I processed it all, I realized that perhaps the true test of faith wasn't believing that God exists, but choosing to stay with Him when the whole world tells you to leave. But how? How to maintain joy and courage when each step of obedience attracts more opposition? That was the question now burning within me, and I knew I needed the answer. Perhaps this was the key to weathering the storm without losing heart along the way. What if I told you there was a kind of joy that only arises in the midst of pain? God's question caught me off guard, almost as if He had proposed something impossible. I frowned, a little incredulous. Joy? In suffering? That seems wrong. No, son, he replied, his voice calm but full of certainty. It seems wrong to those who still measure happiness by the absence of wounds. I remained silent, trying to imagine how joy could inhabit the same space as tears. I wanted to retort, to say that pain steals everything, but he beat me to it. The problem is, you think pain is always a thief, but sometimes it's a messenger. Messenger? I asked, intrigued. Yes, he said. It arrives carrying what you would never seek of your own free will: strength, maturity, and a faith that no longer depends on circumstances. That made me uncomfortable. I didn't want to learn through pain. I wanted to learn in rest, in tranquility. But he insisted, "You know me better in tears than in laughter, because it's when the crutches fall away that you discover it's my hand that holds you up." But Lord, I interrupted, my heart racing, why can't it be different? Why can't I grow in lightness, in laughter? Because laughter can distract, but pain focuses. And when you're focused, you hear me. The answer came like a sharp cut, stripping me of the justifications I'd tried to hold on to. As he spoke, images began to flood my mind. Moments when I was insulted for maintaining my faith, looks of contempt when I chose the truth, cold conversations when I decided not to compromise my principles. And curiously, in these memories, I noticed something I had never noticed before, a strange peace that enveloped me from within, as if heaven had inclined its head to say, "I saw." "Do you think heaven is silent when the world rejects you?" he asked. "No, son. Heaven applauds. Every insult for my sake is recorded as honor before my throne." "So, do you mean I should rejoice when I am insulted?" I asked, still suspicious. "Not just rejoice," he said, a glow of eternity in his voice, "but understand that in that moment you are being identified with me, and there is no greater privilege." That sentence struck a chord in me. I'd always associated blessing with things I could touch, tell, or show, but he was inviting me to see blessing as something invisible, eternal, a glory that begins now but will only be fully revealed on the other side of life. "Lord, what if I can't feel that joy in the midst of pain?" I asked, almost fearing the answer. "Then ask me to teach you, because true joy isn't born from ignoring pain, but from knowing that it's not the end of the story." I stood there, breathing slowly, letting those words wash over me. It was as if he were preparing me for an even greater secret. Something told me that this joy wasn't just about enduring suffering, but about completely transforming the way I face it. And suddenly the question that formed within me was inescapable. If this joy is possible, then how can I experience it even when circumstances don't change? What if I told you that deliverance doesn't always mean getting out of the storm? God's voice cut through my thoughts like an unexpected thunderclap. My instinct was to respond quickly, almost defensively. But isn't that what I ask for every time I pray? That the Lord would take me out of the problem. He waited a moment, as if allowing the weight of his own question to settle in his heart, and then said, "What if instead of removing the storm, I wanted to teach you to walk on water?" I was speechless. That was more than an answer. It was a shock of perspective. I wanted relief. He offered transformation. I wanted a way out. He wanted presence. "Lord, isn't this harder?" I asked, almost like a child discovering the path is longer than they imagined. "Difficult, but eternal," he answered firmly. "Because if I only took away the pain, you would learn to depend on comfort. But if I sustain you in the midst of it, you learn to depend on me." It was strange, and yet it made sense. I remembered the times I thought I couldn't take it anymore, and yet I woke up stronger than the night before. I remembered the days I cried until I had no strength left, and yet I got up to carry on. Perhaps these were the invisible deliverances, Not the change in the situation, but the strength that emerged from a place that wasn't my own. So your deliverance could be not changing anything out there? I asked, feeling a mixture of fear and awe. Yes, he replied, because the real danger isn't the strength of the storm, but the lie it tries to make you believe, that you're alone. Those words burned inside me. How many times in the midst of struggle had I let myself be carried away by that lie? How many times had I interpreted God's silence as absence, when in truth he was closer than ever? But Lord, I insisted, a lump still in my throat. What if I can't handle it? What if I sink? He didn't hesitate. Then I will rescue you, and if you sink again, I will rescue you again. Until one day you realize that the sea cannot swallow you when I am the ground beneath your feet. It was then that I realized something that left me uneasy. Perhaps the miracle wasn't that the storm passed, but that my heart remained at peace as it raged. Perhaps victory wasn't reaching the shore unscathed, but crossing the ocean with enough faith to sing amidst the waves. I looked to the sky as if seeking more answers, but he simply remained silent, as if to say that some things can't be explained, they must be experienced. And it was in this silence that I felt a question arise that I hadn't yet had the courage to ask, but which I knew I needed to. If the Lord sustains me in the midst of the storm, then how can I transform this journey into a prayer that changes not only my experience, but who I am? What if I told you that the answer you've been waiting for is already before you, but you don't recognize it? God's voice came like someone turning on a light in a dark room. My heart raced. What do you mean, Lord? I've prayed, cried out, and nothing changes. He sighed as if understanding my impatience and replied, nothing changes because the first thing that needs to change is you. I felt the sentence like a blow. I wanted him to change the circumstances, but he was stirring within me. But then what do I have to do? I asked, trying to find a quick solution. Stop waiting for peace to come from outside, he said firmly. Peace is a fruit that grows within, and only blossoms when its roots are in me. His words touched me deeply. I realized how often I'd conditioned my faith on what I saw. How many times I'd said God is good, only when doors opened, but questioned his love when they remained closed. But what if I don't have the strength to change that view? I confessed, feeling small. Then ask me to be your strength, he replied, because it is in the recognition of weakness that power is perfected. It was strange, because even as he spoke, an old memory surfaced. It was of a moment when all seemed lost, and yet something inside me said, keep going. Now I understood. It wasn't just my voice, it was him, whispering hope amidst the chaos. So the Lord has always been answering? I asked, almost in disbelief. Always, he said, but not always the way you wanted to hear. Sometimes the answer is a silence that teaches you to listen better. Sometimes it's a delay that saves you from a wrong path. Other times it's a loss that prepares you for something greater. I felt a lump in my throat. So, Lord, what if I'm asking for something that isn't for me? He paused for a moment, and then said something that chilled me. Then I'll say no, even if you cry, because my no is also love. I remained silent, trying to process this. Perhaps the greatest proof of love wasn't him giving me everything I asked for, but protecting me from things I couldn't even imagine. And suddenly I found myself with a burning question. If the Lord has already answered, and the answer is different from what I expect, how can I learn to trust without understanding? What if I told you that the ultimate answer you need isn't in what will happen tomorrow, but in what you decide now? His voice cut through the silence like a bolt of lightning that illuminates the entire landscape for an instant. I was paralyzed. Now? But what about my future, Lord? And everything I still don't understand? He answered calmly, but with a weight that pierced my soul. The future isn't a place you arrive at. It's something you build with every step you take in me. My thoughts became jumbled. I wanted a revelation about tomorrow, but he was talking about today. But Lord, what if I mess up again? I asked, my voice low, almost a whisper. Then I will teach you again, he said without hesitation. Because my patience with you is greater than your haste to get it right. It was as if each sentence of his dismantled the armor I had built to protect myself. I wanted to hold on to control, but I realized it had always been in his hands. So what do you want from me now? I asked, no longer hiding my vulnerability. I want you to love me even when you don't understand. I want you to trust even when you don't see. I want you to follow me even when you don't feel. The words struck deep, It was as if he were inviting me to take a leap into the dark, but with the assurance that his hands would be there to catch me. But what if everything around me collapses? I ventured to ask. Then I'll be the only one left standing, he replied, with a firmness that seemed impossible to shake. At that moment, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, not because all my questions had been answered, but because I realized I don't need all the answers to walk. I need him, and only him. So, Lord, can I rest now? I asked, feeling the tears well up. You can, he said, because I'm already taking care of what you don't even know is coming. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. A peace that made no sense to human logic, but that filled every empty space within me. It was as if he were whispering, "You don't need to know to trust. You don't need to see to believe. I am your happy ending before the story even ends." And in that silence that wasn't absence but presence, I realized that perhaps the true victory wasn't achieving everything I asked for, but learning to remain in him, even when nothing seems to happen. Because perhaps the greatest miracle isn't him changing my life, but changing my heart.